At the first announcement of Metaphor ReFantazio, I knew I just had to get the game. The first trailer was enough for me to know that this is going to be a banger one. What's more is that it's from Atlus, a developer that I'm heavily invested in and a fan of. Upon playing it, all I can say is, what an experience. This is JJ-kun for Exposure Project, bringing you my review of Metaphor ReFantazio. Metaphor ReFantazio, developed by Studio Zero, an internal development studio of Atlus, is a Japanese role-playing game made for the modern consoles and PC. This also marks the first game ever to be developed by Studio Zero, since their previous project is just a definitive version of Catherine. Full body. Being from Atlus and a JRPG at that, it was bound to have some similarities to previous Atlus games, but what I was surprised about is how they executed the game. Establishing a new IP is not a joke, and it's actually such a huge risk. That's why more developers are just, going into remaking and remastering their previous games because it already worked. When you already have an established IP which you can milk, just do that. But what I can say is that this risk of an IP is such a huge success and might actually be the start of a Metaphor series. Maybe, just maybe, who knows, right? Starting the game, you are welcomed by an anime cutscene opening which lays down the foundation of what we're walking into. The king was killed by Louis, a prodigal tactician and army officer, and the prince is missing. Soon thereafter, it was revealed that the prince is under a curse and is being hidden from the public. Because of that, it's anyone's gambit to take the throne, and it's your mission to save the prince from the curse and ensure he becomes the rightful king. To start, your job is to infiltrate the kingdom army, meet up with another spy, and execute Louis. The late king, through his royal magic, announced that the next king has to be someone that the people accept, similar to democracy. Unfortunately, Louis is a very known candidate and is not executable due to the royal magic preventing frontrunners from being executed. It's up to you now to find a way to execute Louis and save the prince from the curse, with one way coming to mind: becoming a candidate yourself. The game wasted no time in setting up its foundation, allowing you to fully enjoy the gameplay segments. It's amazing how a 2-minute anime cutscene opener and a few dialogues upon starting the game can really immerse you through the worlds of Metaphor ReFantazio. Everything is outlined and all you have to do is follow it, but not in the way that it holds your hand. The pacing of the story is also just amazing. In my experience playing other Atlus titles, pacing is one of the biggest problems given how the flow of the story is always interrupted by the gameplay. It was only until Persona 5 that Atlus was able to manage it, at least for me. That said, Metaphor ReFantazio follows suit to Persona 5 in terms of pacing and actually improves on it. So if you think if the latter is great, man, the former is even better. We also have to talk about the characters though. They are all goofy in a good way. While I've related and gotten in touch with different characters of different games I've played before, I can confidently say that this is the first time that I got attached to every cast member. It's amazing how well each character was written, which makes them all the more relatable. Moreover, every character has their background, reasons, and motivation, and the game does not cut corners when introducing these. It is especially important that they handle this aspect well due to the sheer amount of characters. It's not even just the protagonist and the gang, but your social links or cult followers in the game, along with the antagonists, are all well written as well. Personally, there are times when I feel like the script gets boring for Persona games, but Metaphor ReFantazio, it left no crumbs at all, even for supporting characters. Finally, the themes of the game. There's a lot the game is tackling: utopia, anxiety, social injustice, inequality, discrimination and racism, cult, and religion, just to name a few, and all of these were delicately handled in a way that it makes you realize that these things are still happening in the real world. It's not far from fantasy of which this game is set, and maybe that is the metaphor behind it. If there's any complaint I have for the game's story aspect, is that there's some times where you feel like you're reaching the end of the game, but the game will deliver you more. But then again, I guess it's not really a complaint, is it? As someone who plays Atlus titles, it's undeniable that the Atlus art style is back. It's using the same style as the previous titles, which actually made it a tad bit difficult to separate the game from similar titles, like, Persona series. After all, it's just Persona but in a fantasy setting, right? However, that's mostly the similarities in terms of the graphics. The game's medieval fantasy setting, through the game's engine and Atlus' signature art style, looks fantastic and nothing feels out of place. It felt like it was actually made for it. It's just beautiful. And you know how they started with Persona 5 with this very artistic, stylistic user interface that was also present in Persona 3 Reload? This time, they made it even better, fitting to the fantasy setting. Look, it may not be utilizing a moving 3D model of the protagonist just like those games mentioned, but the dynamic 2D menu was simply just amazing and proved that they can make any menu look great. In terms of overworld, field, and in-battle user interface, it might actually feel overwhelming if you're only watching the game, if not watching trailers, but that's only because you're not the one actually playing the game. It's a different experience altogether when you are playing it. The dynamic, expressive UI for this game is just superbly thematic. I love it so much. There's some towns and places you'll be visiting but not access, quote unquote, and only see it as a key visual, much like visual novels, but God, are they beautifully drawn. I only have two minor peeves for this game. One, dungeons were using assets, and two, some CGI cutscenes felt like a downgrade from Persona 3 Reload. There's only a few unique dungeons to the game, but the redeeming factor for this is that these dungeons use different map layouts and different puzzles totally unique from each other, which makes it all the more exciting to explore. For the CGI cutscenes, it was a rather hit or miss. There are some CGI cutscenes that feel so great, like the archetype Awakenings, but others not so much. It felt too raw for my tastes. At least the anime cutscenes are an overall improvement. If there's anything super worth noting from Atlus titles, it's definitely going to be the music department. It's a totally different genre of music that fits the fantasy medieval setting of the game. The varying music with amazing execution required for the different moves and tones of the game was just perfect. Even the cities and towns' background music perfectly complemented each unique environment. And the best part? A church choir with a singing monk center. If you think Atlus music is great, wait till you hear a monk rapping before he gives you the baddest beat drop of the century. I don't know what Shoji Meguro is taking, but I need some of those. I really do. Oh, let's also not forget that all of the background music are canonically playing inside the protagonist's head through Gallica's magic, your traveling fairy companion. I only have one issue though. While the game has an almost perfect matching for the background music, they reused the title screen music for a very crucial moment in the game. To be fair though, it's just one time, but I really feel like they should have used a totally different track for that one moment. Imagine this. Shin Megami Tensei combined with its spin-off, Persona. That is what this game is. It takes the best of each series, improves on it, and makes it its own. For one, the turn-based gameplay we all love comes back for this title, following Shin Megami Tensei's press turn system, all the while implementing the weather mechanics from Persona. It even went beyond and introduced a formation system where characters may be switched from the front and back rows, increasing melee damage and decreasing defense and vice versa. It doesn't even take a turn to switch a character from a row. Furthermore, the real-time action gameplay is returning as well, but what I like about the implementation of this comes in its execution, since it's now, it definitely feels like a real-time action combat. In contrast to previous Atlus titles where you just run over opponents or hit them when you're, 3 levels ahead of your of the enemies of the monsters just to get an easy kill. This one does that, but it makes it looks fun and better to do. And the protagonist may also be KO'd as well during turn-based segments, which is actually a nice pace of change. Some more of the features that are similar to previous Atlus titles are the followers, royal virtues, and archetype system. The follower system is more of a mix between Persona's social links and confidence system, and Devil Survivor 2's fate system, where the more you bond with your followers, the more you unlock abilities and different types of archetypes. Royal Virtues, on the other hand, is the game's social stats system. The archetype system in the game is literally Persona's persona system, except every character may use any archetypes in the game, in comparison to Persona, where the protagonist is the only one that may change personas. This also determines which weapons the characters will use. The limitation for this, however, is that you may only switch archetypes pre-battle, though the good thing about this is how you can inherit skills from other archetypes. The game has a lot of wiggle room for activities you can do in the game, allowing you to max out both followers and virtual virtues with more time to spare. If you miss out on maxing those, it's one of the biggest issues that I've had playing Persona titles, making sure that you have everything calculated so that you can max out everything. But this, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that problem. If you missed out on maxing out on those, it's most likely your fault. Additionally, it follows the Persona 5 system of deadlines, allowing you to do the main tasks as early as possible and letting you do whatever you want before the set deadline. It allows for a great pacing of playing and narrative. Finally, the last one I appreciate the most is the difficulty curve. I played on hard difficulty throughout my gameplay since the hardest difficulty is locked until you finish the game, and even then, it was already a great experience. The game makes sure that your level is within the recommended level throughout the narrative and you wouldn't be left out of levels. If there's anything you should grind in the game, it's magla. It's the currency for archetypes, so that you may be able to acquire more archetypes and inherit skills. On top of that, leveling up your archetype should not be much of an issue as well, since you acquire archetype XP items throughout your journey, if not obtaining XP with your maxed out archetype in use. Minigames released nowadays are very expensive, and it's definitely one of the deciding factors whether or not to get a game. For the price of 2,895 pesos for Steam or 2,650 for console standard editions, I can say without hesitation that this game is worth every penny. It is by far the best Atlus titles I've played, with easy to master mechanics and effortlessly racks a minimum of 70 hours to finish the game. If there's any game that's worth its full price, it's this game. You know how I always tell people, and you guys, to hold back for sales if the price is not worth it, right? Better yet, if you're still not convinced, you may download the demo on your respective platforms and test the game yourself. Your demo save may also be transferred to full game, so that's a good thing, right? But I digress. If there's any reason you should hold off buying this, it's only for the inevitable definitive version re-release of the game, like Persona 5 Royal, Persona 3 Reload, and Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, or, Catherine Full Body. I mean, it's Atlus. It's bound to happen. I kid you not though, you won't regret getting this even at its current state. It's damn near perfect for a JRPG. Atlus has released multiple hard-hitting games this year like Persona 3 Reload, Unicorn Overlord, and Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, but this game is just levels beyond those. I'll say it again. This is by far Atlus's best game so far, might actually be their magnum opus, and I'm amazed with Studio Zero being that this is their first actual game project. First announced in 2016 as Project ReFantazio, the 8-year development time finally paid off. See, look, I can confidently say that Persona 3, 4, and 5 can all suck it. In fact, I'll even go on the record to say that this is a Game of the Year material. It will win that, for sure. On a more personal note, success comes with some downsides. One of those are sequels. Please, I don't want this game to have any sequels as it's already perfect as it is. If anything, Atlus, if you're listening, please, just make a new story, much like what you do with Persona and Shin Megami Tensei, not a sequel. Perhaps a metaphor cyberpunk or something like that.